We've got some news coming out of New York City I wanted to get to. I mentioned at the top of the show our good friend, Mr. Sean Hannity, the one and only. He is now a Florida resident. He announced this, which is great. I'm a Florida resident. Sean's a Florida resident. If you started to add up all the people who work in conservative media who either live in or spend at least half the year in Florida, I think people would be pretty amazed at the concentration of media figures, particularly on the right here in the Sunshine State. But I bring it up because Sean said and didn't mince any words. It's because the taxes and the crime and the poor governance and the mess. I mean, the reason that so many of us, myself included, have decided. I love New York City. I will say this. I will always love New York City. It will always feel like home to me, I think, more than any other place. But I had to make a change. And I still go back frequently. My family, half my family is in New York, half my family is now in Florida. But I see what's happening, and this goes right to it. Two things that are really tied together in my mind, as I think it's obvious that they are. Mayor Eric Adams says this just came out. This has been true all along, but he said that and admits that New York City is not allowed to. This is a Daily Mail headline: turn migrants over to ICE agents, and he says that people are going to be sleeping on the streets. There are too many migrants for the system in New York, and I agree with you. The term migrants, it's hard to get around this. Let me tell you why. Because they've entered the country illegally, but they are in the country under the false pretense, but it is still the pretense that they are trying to get asylum. And so this is why they are referred to as migrants or asylum seekers. The challenge here is we all know they're not going to get asylum, or 90% of them are not going to get asylum. And we also know that they will not be deported, which is the law as it pertains to asylum. That is what it states if and when they are denied their asylum claim, which almost all of them will be. So do you see what I mean? They've created this situation where you can be attacked. If you say that these are illegal aliens, there are people who are going to say, no, they're asylum seekers. They're just waiting for their day in court. It is bad faith. It is cynical, but you can see how it complicates matters, right? Their entry into the country is illegal. Their refusal to show up but the courts are so backlogged now. I think it's 3 million plus cases, 3 million court cases. Think about that. How many immigration judges do we even have? It's a disaster, the whole thing. And it's a disaster that is man-made. The system is overwhelmed, but the system is overwhelmed because of decisions that people in the Democrat Party primarily, but not only, there are Republicans who are right alongside them. They take those checks from the donor class and from the Chamber of Commerce, and we need cheap labor. Think about that all the time. What, really? America's got 330 million people. We have to import cheap labor? What's that all about? Why is that labor cheaper? Let's think about this for a minute. Because people are being exploited, and also the costs of dealing with the cheaper labor, particularly with English as a second language in the schools, and with healthcare being given in the emergency rooms. That cost is all socialized onto the taxpayer. And you say, oh, yeah, no wonder they get to pay below rate wages, not pay benefits, and then the extremely high chance, high probability of being a welfare dependent for the people that are in the country illegally in some way or another is then everyone else's expense, right? So yeah, this is great for the people that can use the cheap labor in this way, but it's wrong and it's illegal, and that's why it's illegal. But I bring this up because Eric Adams says that New York City is not allowed to turn migrants over to Immigrations and Customs Enforcement. At the same time, the Biden administration is going to court and saying Texas has to remove its razor wire. They are anti-immigration law, period. They do not want enforcement of these laws. They will stand in the way. They will use the force of law to prevent people from enforcing immigration law. Think about that for a moment. Think about what the implications are. Think about what it means that this is the position the Biden administration is taking. They are on the side of continued lawlessness. They are on the side of the continuation of now we're looking at 300,000 a month, 300,000 people a month. How many of you live in a city or a town with less than 300,000 people? A lot. Probably a vast majority of you. 300,000 is a big number for 1 month, isn't it? Biden's going to be at 8 million illegals. Oh, 8 million asylum seekers. Yeah, please. And you say, well, why does this matter so much? I lay out some of the reasons and some of the obvious downsides to this. But here's one. And this one I am particularly irascible on this issue because I have a theory. Having spent some of my time overseas back in my CIA analyst days in countries that I think Trump would describe as a hellhole, or actually, no, he used a different term, but nasty countries, countries where people are unfortunately exposed to far too much corruption, disease, violence, disorder, lawlessness, all of those things. Right? And I'm going to tell you one of the things that you can use right away to tell you about the civilization that you are in and the level of how civil the society is what does it do with its trash? It's just the truth. Any of you listening to me who have spent real time in the third world know there is trash everywhere. And no one cares. I mean, it's just, just on the sides of the highways, people just throw plastic bags full of garbage, full of refuse, boom, sprays open all over the place. All over the place. You go into poor countries and if there's any any concentration of people, any population center, there's just garbage everywhere, everywhere. And that to me is always one of the, now there are obviously rural parts of poor countries we won't see any garbage, but I'm talking about in the city centers, the population centers, you'll see trash everywhere. I mean, I've been in places where children were walking around in massive slums of cinder block and I mean, I guess you call it a shanty, like corrugated metal roofs and the most rudimentary, no indoor plumbing, and walked around and there's trash absolutely everywhere. In the one place I'm thinking of, there were actually goats that were walking around, just kind of like picking through the trash. And there were children walking around in little streams that go around the houses, just raw sewage. And this is a bad sign for how a society is doing. Trash. And it has a psychological impact. Now, I'm talking about some of the poorest. I've been in some of the poorest places in the world. And it was eye-opening. Now, I'm not suggesting that New York is a poor place. Quite the contrary. New York City is an incredible concentration of wealth, but it's about to get a lot dirtier. And it's getting dirtier because of the budget cuts that are being made to services, and those budget cuts are coming in large part from the billions and billions of dollars that New Yorkers are paying to support the migrants. You see how this all ties in together? In 2024, Mayor Adams has announced that sidewalk trash collection service will be reduced by 40%. 40%. I mean, now I understand you say, oh, it's trash removal. People are going to be walking around. I know New York as well as anybody. And people are going to be walking around in Midtown, not necessarily so much on the Upper East Side, not so much on the Upper West Side. People are going to be walking around in Midtown. People are going to be walking around in other more, middle-class neighborhoods of the boroughs, densely populated middle-class neighborhoods in the boroughs and Queens. It's going to be trash up to their elbows. I mean, it's going to be a disaster. And it's wrong. It's wrong because the people who live there should not be subjected to this. They should have clean streets. I don't think that clean streets are just some luxury for a society. I think that it's like you get, You get indoor plumbing, you get people with potable drinking water from the tap, and you get clean streets. These are really important things. And the fact that New York City is going to become, how else could you see this? 40% trash reduction. I mean, a trash pickup reduction on the streets. It's going to be the dirtiest it's been in decades, maybe ever. And why? Because people are coming here who are not supposed to be here, and they're taking money from the taxpayers of the city of New York. That is what is happening. Now, I'm not even talking about there's going to be cuts to the NYPD. There are going to be cuts to other city services. So, now we're talking about crimes and other things. But in the same way that graffiti in New York City in the 90s was the most visual depiction of the urban decay, and it was everywhere. There was, I remember this, 1990, 1991. We got former NYPD listening. They know what people who live in New York City know what I'm talking about, but certainly the cops know. There was just this craze, and it was it was like a virus had spread. There's graffiti everywhere. And so wherever you went, you were just reminded people break the law here. People don't take care of their neighborhoods. People don't care about other people's property. Lawlessness, lawlessness. And now in New York City, people are going to be constantly reminded as they go to walk their dogs, as they take their children to school, as they just trash all over the streets because it's not going to get picked up. And what do you think people are going to do? They're going to say, "Oh, I don't want to be littering here. I'm going to pick up after myself in Times Square. Give me a break." A lot of cultures, a lot of societies, honestly, don't really care about trash. That's a whole other conversation. They don't view it the same way that we do here as Americans in America, and that's another component of this discussion. But the most important thing is they're cutting back on services so that New Yorkers get to live with trash all around them to make accommodations for people who have made the affirmative decision to lie to Border Patrol and to come to this country in violation of our laws and skip the immigration queue as it currently exists. And Democrats are going to continue this all through to the election. Honestly, if anybody who has a problem with this votes Democrat, they don't have a problem with it. They're actually voting for it to continue. And I think that it is really bothersome that I know that so many people, including my own family members, are going to be walking around on streets that are going to be filthy. Oh, and the rat population is going to skyrocket because not only will there be more trash for them to eat, but also as part of this budget change, they're getting rid of the rat control efforts. So now you get to have trash everywhere. I mean, people know this. If they don't pick up trash in New York City, the trash bags get to be like 8 feet high. Okay. And there's rats. The rats are already running around. They're the size of sea otters. I got to hold Ginger back. I'm afraid Ginger's going to be a snack for one of them. Like, it's crazy. And this is the trade-off. All these people vote Democrat in New York City. They're getting what they voted for, folks. For the Republicans who listen to this show in New York and the New York City area and my own family, there's a reason Sean Hannity just moved to Florida. I don't know what else to say. I mean, people see this for what it is. People see this for what's really going on.